We are following breaking news in other parts of the world this morning. We want to get you right to that.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Good morning. Welcome to your new day. It is Monday, May 14th, 8 o'clock in the East. Allison's off. Erica Hill joining me, and there's a lot of news. Thanks for being here with me. Let's begin with breaking news. Deadly protests intensifying along the Gaza border. As of now, 25 people have been reported killed in these clashes by the Palestinian authorities. The violence breaking out just hours from when the U.S. Embassy is due to officially open in Jerusalem.
The Trump administration and Israel celebrating the move. The big question, though, will this add more instability to a region which, as we know, is already on edge? We begin with CNN's Ian Lee, who is live there in Gaza with more on these breaking details. Ian?
Erica, that death toll rose to 25 just a little while ago. This makes it the deadliest day in these past 7 weeks of protests. Hundreds of people have also been injured. And behind me, we're still hearing a lot of this confrontation. Tank fire, although we're asking the Israeli military if they are using tanks. But despite all that, it is a very tense situation here on the border. There's thousands of people have been coming in and out throughout the day. And right now, we're about hundreds of meters away from that border fence. That is the red line for the Israelis. They say they don't want anyone to get near it or get over it. And they say that they will use different means to stop that. Some non-lethal means like tear gas. We've seen drones dropping tear gas on these crowds today, but also they say that they will use live rounds if needed to stop people from breaching that fence. They say that is their worst case scenario, having hundreds of people trying to get across and infiltrate that fence. You know, the other thing we've been watching too are these kites that they've been using. They light the tails on fire and then they let them go. They fly across the border, and we've seen a number of fires on the Israeli side. And so you're just getting this mixture of all this today, which is leading to that very high death toll.
Ian Lee with the latest for us there. Ian, thank you. That bloodshed, of course, along the Israeli-Gaza border unfolding as the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem is about to open. CNN's Elise Labit is at the embassy right now with more. Elise?
Well, Erica, the mood here is jubilant. This is a day that Israelis have been waiting to celebrate. Their closest ally, the U.S., recognizing their capital, Jerusalem, they feel that is their rightful capital, with the opening of their embassy. As the celebrations are going on behind me, the ceremony about to start in just over an hour, though the IDF is very concerned about these protesters. They're calling them rioters, talking about Molotov cocktails and explosive devices. The IDF saying that it just thwarted a terrorist attack, an explosive device on the border with Gaza. That said, people are not letting it dampen the mood here. We're expected to hear from President Trump in a taped address, also hear from Prime Minister Netanyahu, who is calling this a very emotional day. He will also call on other countries to follow suit, follow President Trump's lead, and move their capital here to Jerusalem, move their embassies here. We'll also hear from Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, who is about to unveil his own peace plan. So even as Israelis are celebrating today, obviously this is a crushing blow to Palestinians, and they are making their frustrations felt throughout the Palestinian territories today. Erica?
All right, Elise, thank you.
All right, let's bring in CNN political analyst John Avlon and president and founder of the Eurasia Group, Ian Bremmer, author of the Us versus Them, The Failure of Globalism. Look, unfortunately, great day for your book and the discussion. This is not new in terms of authority for a U.S. administration, all right? Republican and Democrat presidents have waived on this, all right? They said, yeah, we have the power to move the embassy. We're not going to. Not because they don't recognize Jerusalem as the putative capital of Israel, but because of the political implications to the peace process and wanting the two sides to work it out before the U.S. would make such a dispositive move. The calculus has changed. What's the plus minus?
Well, the plus minus that the Israelis are our friends and we don't care about the Palestinians. I mean, you just saw, you don't get much more us versus them than that. We're jubilant about opening the Jerusalem embassy, and so are the Israelis. And 25 Palestinians are dead, throwing themselves against the wall in Gaza, and those numbers are going to go up. President Trump said it very well. Walls work. And nowhere do walls work better in the world than separating the Palestinians from the Israelis. And as long as you're not Palestinian, what's the problem? Right? And if we don't care about the Palestinians, this is a great day. We're jubilant, right? Yeah. That's what we're hearing. And the problem is that if you're Palestinian, you feel like you've been lied to for decades by the Americans trying to be an honest broker for the two-state solution, by the Europeans saying you're going to put sanctions and boycotts on and make it different for them, by the United Nations saying that you really care, by your own Palestinian Authority that's never gotten it done for you. And so as a consequence, what's left for you? Well, for 25 of them, nothing at all.
Look, I mean, the dark irony of understatement undergirding what Ian said, the contrast between what Elise Labbitt's describing as the jubilation inside the room and the bloodshed on the Gaza border is striking. And you can't simply say it's working. This isn't working if people are being massacred and there's an aura of indifference among part of the international community. What I think the real cost is while Trump, crosses another item off his campaign promise to-do list, and previous presidents have campaigned and said they'd do this and didn't, this really makes it infinitely more difficult for the United States to be the honest broker. Abbas has lost credibility with his people, given anti-Semitic speeches recently that are utterly repugnant. But this is not a precursor to peace. Jared Kushner may say he's got a peace plan ready to unveil, but you can't kill a peace plan that's already dead. And this is a very compromised environment, and the Trump administration is not going to have the moral authority to bridge the divide in the two-state solution.
Well, and to your point, this crosses one thing off of a campaign promise list. This does not in any way advance another campaign promise, which was that there would be the ultimate peace deal here. And of course, this coupled with pulling out of the Iran deal just makes it infinitely more complicated.
Ludicrous to think that Jared Kushner was going to bring peace between Israel and Palestine. The campaign promise was to leave the Iran deal. He's done that as well. Look, the Israelis are happy, and the pro-Israel lobby in the United States is very happy. The evangelicals are very happy, and they're there in force, and that certainly is Trump's base. I don't think there are any Palestinians in Trump's base. And so as a consequence, when you say, well, this isn't a win, it's not sustainable, even the Israeli left today doesn't talk much about a two-state solution because the Palestinians aren't really a threat to them. And we've been dealing with this kind of violence. It's been not as bad, but for decades now, right? And so you just get inured to it. Suddenly it doesn't matter as much.
It's also a straight alliance play, right?
Yes, of course.
The strongest ally in the region is Israel. This is something that matters to them. They are of increasing importance on the intel work right now and what's developing in the dynamic with Iran. What's provoking it, what isn't, that's a longer discussion. But for the United States to shore up that relationship, do something that Israel has asked for, why isn't that seen as at least a qualified positive?
Look, I think it is seen as a positive, but for me, it's much more about the domestic politics and the campaign promise, because not as if Trump really cares about how allies feel about the United States around the world. He's more than willing to slap down the most important allies the United States has in terms of Europe on the Paris peace deal, on the Iranian deal, on everything. The French, the Germans coming here saying, you're going to listen to us, and he's saying, talk to the hand, right? So, I mean, it's not as if Israel and Saudi Arabia are more important to the U.S. than the Europeans or the Canadians and the Mexicans, but domestically, this issue plays for Trump, and it's clearly a win. Netanyahu was not happy with the United States with Obama, but the U.S.-Israel relationship under Obama was also very strong under Bush and under Trump.
Well, but not according to Netanyahu, and that's actually one of the real concerns. I mean, the Obama administration did an enormous amount in terms of financial aid to Israel, but the increasing drift of policies of Likud to associate with the Republican Party undercuts the fact that bipartisan, the tradition of the relationship between the United States and Israel has been bipartisan. That has been undercut the more Netanyahu, campaigns, effectively goes to Congress and effectively endorses Mitt Romney during the 2012 election. This descends from there. I think the other thing is that Trump, by following through on the Jerusalem move, there was an expectation that the Arab world and the leaders in the region would really denounce it and rally behind the Palestinians. There have been basically crickets. The Arab world has been not rallying around the Palestinian cause, and so the Palestinians feel increasingly alone and isolated, and presumably that brings a degree of anger and fear and potentially terrorist activity that we haven't seen at a level we haven't seen.
But intuitively, their problem should be with their Arab allies. not
Yes.
with the United States.
Correct.
The United States is doing something that really it's promised to do for generations of leadership here. What made it an exigency now is open to dispute, obviously. But the United States isn't telling Iran to be quiet about this. It's giving them every reason to open their mouths as wide as they can right now.
You've got to give Trump credit. I mean, the Saudis, for example, came out publicly and said, look, after the Jerusalem move, said, hey, the Palestinians are going to have to just accept a deal.
Right.
I think if it wasn't for Trump, under another president, the Saudis wouldn't have said that. But Trump went to Saudi Arabia first. Then he went to Israel. That was his first trip. And they're saying, yeah, OK, I'll support you. Because, again, the Palestinians aren't a priority for any of the countries in the region right now that are with the United States. Not the Jordanians, not the Egyptians, the Saudis and the Emiratis, much closer to Israel than ever before. Like, this just is so far from a top priority for anyone there except the Palestinians. And so as a consequence, we've got 25 dead. And you know what? In 2 days, we're not going to be talking about it.
And so if it's not such a priority, right, for the rest of the world, then as we look at this, is this ultimately going to be a win for President Trump, meaning that he's starting to move that conversation in a different direction with this move? It's helping to push it.
Look, it's very difficult to, I think, stomach talk of a win in the breaking news
Yes.
of 25
No,
people dead. But
obviously
of course,
I don't mean it in that context.
But he's been trying to play an offensive game as he does, rearranging the Middle East chessboard and having the Saudis and the Israelis all in agreement at least on one thing, which is containing and counteracting Iran. That's the larger game. And he has been effective, I think, at reshuffling some alliances with tough talk and following through on this, because the Saudis didn't squawk about the Jerusalem move. Far from it.
But there's always going to be a cost, right? You don't think that you're going to move an embassy there and no one's going to die. You knew that there was going to be a violent backlash to it. In fact, we have to see. This is very early. The ceremony hasn't even happened yet. But this is certainly at the light end of the scale of what was being projected, what might happen when they move. And again, it's very early. I'm not saying that we know the full turnout of this, but this is a dynamic that Trump is comfortable with. Not in depth. That's not what I mean by any way. But this may increase volatility. I'm getting us out of the Iran deal. Yes, I hear you. I hear you, big brains, that, this may make them more provocative. They may do more things. That's okay. It's a cost I'm okay with. With China, I'm being nice to China now. I'm helping them with ZTE. I know what you're saying. I know we're going to be at odds with them on Korea soon enough, that they don't want a democratic state. They want a land barrier. I'm okay with that volatility. I'll take it when it comes. What's the plus minus on that?
It's not about common values. It's about winners and losers. Trump sees the world in winners and losers more than any president we've experienced. And, the Israelis are on our side. They're winning. The Palestinians, from his perspective, have chosen not to be willing to engage with the United States on our terms, on Israeli terms. They're losers. The Iranians, decided that they weren't going to work more closely with the U.S. on other issues like ballistic missiles, support for terrorists, and proxy wars against us and our allies. They're losers, right? I mean, so Trump's willingness to divide the world into winners and losers. And if you lose, you don't count. You don't matter. You're going to get hurt. We're more powerful. That's exactly what we see playing out right here. And while the Trump administration is jubilant over setting up an embassy in Jerusalem, the Palestinians are losers, and they don't count as much. We've had 11 refugees, Syrian refugees, come to the United States so far this year. 11, right? And a lot of Americans are like, you know what? That's 11 too many. When you have a president that supports winners and losers, the Syrian refugees are losers too.
And the flip side to your winners and losers dichotomy is that history shows us that reconciliation occurs when you get something close to a win-win. Trump believes in being tough, changing people's calculus. But ultimately, that role the United States is uniquely suited to play historically at being a reconciling power, a redeeming power. That's about getting to a win-win. That's utterly at odds with a win-lose view of the world.
Completely agree.
John, appreciate it. Thank you both. Well, as we've been talking, Israelis celebrating the historic opening of the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. That happens less than an hour from now. This, of course, as these protests are raging in Palestinian territories. We'll take a closer look at those dueling reactions when we're joined by Israel's ambassador to the UN next. 25 people are dead as clashes erupt at the Gaza border ahead of the opening of the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. That takes place just moments from now. Joining us from that new embassy is Michael Oren, Israel's Deputy Minister of Diplomacy and former Israeli ambassador to the U.S. Sir, we appreciate you taking some time for us today.
Hi, Erica. Welcome from Jerusalem. It's a great moment for us here. We've waited 70 years for this moment, for America to recognize Jerusalem as our capital. Jerusalem, of course, has been the capital of the Jewish people for 3,000 years. And here the embassy is moving right behind me. It's a great day for us.
I know you've said you believe this is the right decision when it comes to the peace process. A former special envoy to the Middle East, George Mitchell, this morning telling my colleague Chris Cuomo this undermines the president's own efforts for a two-state solution. As you know, that's been echoed by U.S. allies in Europe, in the Middle East as well. All of this playing out against the backdrop of the U.S. pulling out of the Iran deal. How does this, in fact, move the peace process forward?
I think it does move the peace process forward. First of all, there was no peace process to move forward. There hasn't been talks with the Palestinians for 9 years. I was in that last round. They lasted for exactly 6 hours. So this shakes up the diplomatic situation here. It informs the Palestinians unequivocally there's a price to pay for not negotiating because they won't come to the negotiating table. But it also opens an opportunity for the Palestinians. President Trump has tweeted twice that he is willing to exact a price for what's going on behind me for moving the embassy if the Palestinians would avail themselves of that opportunity. We hope that they do. We hope they come back to the negotiating table. I think that the president has proven that he's a man of his word. And in mediations, as my friend George Mitchell knows, in mediations, credibility is everything.
The Jerusalem Post reporting earlier this month that Trump administration officials had informed the Israeli Defense Ministry that the U.S. plans to ask Israel to withdraw from 4 Arab neighborhoods in East Jerusalem as one part of perhaps a larger peace plan. Would current Israeli leadership accept that?
Well, I can't speculate, and I'm not going to relate to leaks in the press. What I will say is this. President Trump is a businessman. His special envoys here are business people as well. And in business, I'm told, when people sit down at the negotiating table, all sides are expected to make concessions. We have to accept that in Israel. It's important. And we have to keep our eye on the bigger picture, Erica, all the time. That is, with this administration, which is an outstandingly friendly administration toward us, we have many core issues. We have Iran, as you mentioned. We have Syria. We have Gaza, as you also mentioned. There's the delegitimization in the UN. This administration has stood by us foursquare. If they ask us to do something, I strongly recommend that we treat that request with great respect.
Okay, so we'll be watching to see what happens with that if that request does in fact come through. In terms of who will be on hand today, the president choosing 2 controversial pastors, as we know, one to give the benediction, another to give the prayer. Here's a little bit of what Reverend Robert Jeffress has said. Take a listen, if you would.
Some tend to think of President Trump as a man you better not cross.
Well, apologies on that, the wrong tape rolling there, but I'm just going to say for you what he said. So Jeffress saying, quote, Islam is wrong. It is a heresy from the pit of hell. Mormonism is wrong. It is a heresy from the pit of hell. Judaism, you know, you can't be saved by being a Jew. This morning he said those comments were taken out of context, but it seems pretty clear as to what he said there. Does it bother you at all that this is a man who has been chosen to give the prayer today at the opening of the embassy?
Well, I do not know this pastor. I've never met him, never heard his remarks, and I certainly wasn't involved in choosing him to give any opening benedictions. For the record, I think that Islamophobia is despicable, certainly anti-Semitism, and I have great respect for Mormonism. So it doesn't reflect certainly my views, the views of my government, and the views of my people.
Does it tarnish the events of today?
I have not heard this man. I do not know if he's speaking in a fact. So I can't comment on something I really don't know about, nor do I know the individual.
When we're looking at, of course, and I know we're hearing from you and from our folks there on the ground, this is being seen as a jubilant day, as you point out, there in Jerusalem for the Israelis. And then we're also seeing, of course, what's playing out along the border with Gaza. We're told 25 people now dead. How does that impact what's happening today?
Well, it's not going to impact in any way the jubilation that you see going on behind us. We've waited for this moment, as I said, for many, many years. And it is a watershed moment, a historic moment for Israel and for the Jewish people. As for Gaza, that was taking place quite irrespective of what was going on here. It's been going on every Friday now for a month. The protests there are designed not to bring about peace. They are expressly designed to destroy the Jewish state, to break through our border, to kill Israelis. Our troops are doing what they have to do, which is defending our border. And Hamas, the terrorist group that runs Gaza, is sending young people up to that border. They're paying them to get shot, believe it or not. They're paying them something like $500 per gunshot wound, because just to get the type of media attention which they're getting now, unfortunately. Israel has done more than any other country to try to alleviate the humanitarian situation in Gaza. I personally have been involved in that. We had the only open crossing into Gaza this week. Palestinians, stirred on by Hamas, burned down their own crossing, burned their own energy lines so that they can cry humanitarian crisis to the world and have the world blame us. I hope that this time it won't work. And I hope that someday the Palestinians in Gaza, like those in Judea and Samaria and the West Bank, will come to the negotiating table.
Let me back you up for a minute there. Are you saying that what we're seeing along the border here is nothing but a play for media attention and that it shouldn't be covered, that 25 people have died?
No, I think you have to make your decision what should be covered, but it's certainly a play for media attention. And it's working stunningly. It works every week. You know, as we're speaking now, the Syrian army is attacking the Yarmouk Palestinian refugee camp. They're killing hundreds, maybe thousands of Palestinians. Has CNN covered it? Has anybody covered it? Does anybody care when Syrians kill Palestinians? It's only when there's conflict between Israelis and Palestinians, and Hamas knows this, and it knows if it sends kids up to the border to break through the border, and Israeli soldiers have to defend that border, that's going to get media attention. It works very well.
Do you believe there is an opportunity for any sort of a peace discussion moving forward? You're saying the Palestinians aren't showing any want at this point really to come to the table. We've been talking about that earlier this morning. Where does it go from here?
They could come back to the table. I think, again, I said that President Trump has demonstrated that he is a man of his word. And I know from many years of involvement in diplomacy, that is perhaps the most important characteristic of any mediator. Yes, I understand that the recognition of Jerusalem, the moving of the embassy, was not popular, to say the least, among the Palestinians, but the president has said repeatedly that he's willing to consider concessions for the Palestinians as well. And I certainly think that they should avail themselves of that opportunity, though it may be very difficult for us, Erica. I think the major goal is to move the Palestinian issue to a better place, if not peace, if not solution, to a better place, so that Israel and our Sunni Arab neighbors, particularly in the Gulf, we can openly ally strategically and meet the Iranian threat.
Michael Oren, appreciate you joining us this morning. Thank you.
Good day. Thank you.
All right. In a shocking reversal.
Continuing to stay on top of this breaking news, 37 Palestinians are dead. That death toll continues to rise. 1,500 now reported injured as protesters in Gaza rally against the opening of the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. All of this, of course, comes as we're learning more about what will happen today, including what Jared Kushner is expected to say during the embassy's opening ceremony, which kicks off in just a matter of moments. CNN's Elise Labott is at the embassy right now with more on that. Elise?
That's right, Erica. Well, we're expected to hear a taped address by President Trump, and also Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will be addressing the crowd. But really, Ivanka Trump, President Trump's daughter, and Jared Kushner are really the star attractions here. And Jared Kushner, as you know, is President Trump's Mideast negotiator. He's been traveling the region, working on a peace deal between Israelis and Palestinians. He will be addressing the ceremony, and they just released a few excerpts and obviously giving President Trump credit for this historic decision. Let me read a little bit of the remarks that we've heard so far. Jared Kushner will say, while presidents before him have backed down from their pledge to move the American embassy once they were in office, this president delivered. Because when President Trump makes a promise, he keeps it. And obviously, that's a message that this administration has been talking about, not just in terms of Israel, but in terms of President Trump's upcoming meeting in North Korea with the chairman, Kim Jong-un. But also, you know, Jared Kushner is the one that will be negotiating this peace deal. And what the U.S. officials have said is that the move, this very controversial move, which clearly is a blow to Palestinians who see Jerusalem as possibly a future capital of a Palestinian state, they say that this will, U.S. officials saying that this move will give Israelis the confidence to make the kind of compromise that they want to give to the Palestinians. Last quote from Jared Kushner, we believe it's possible for both sides to gain more than they give, so that all people can live in peace, safe from danger, free from fear, and able to pursue their dreams. Jerusalem must remain a city that brings people of all faiths together. And while President Trump did recognize Jerusalem as the future capital, he's not precluding the fact that part of Jerusalem could be part of a Palestinian state. in the future after negotiations between the two parties, Erica.
Elise Labott with the latest for us there. Elise, thank you. Let's get to the bottom line now with Fareed Zakaria, host of CNN's Fareed Zakaria GPS. I mean, as we look at this, just in your estimation, what is the bottom line today? As we're looking at everything that's playing out, right? We're looking at this rising death toll in terms of Palestinians, and then the jubilant, we keep hearing the word jubilant in terms of how the Israelis are looking at today with this U.S. embassy opening.
I think it was a very non-strategic move, by which I mean to say Trump is supposed to be the master of the art of the deal. It's very rare to make a major concession to one side without getting something from the other. This has been a prize. Look, there are 86 countries that recognize Israel. All their embassies are in Tel Aviv. This is a very big gift to Israel. You would normally imagine that if it were part of a larger strategic plan, you would ask the Israelis in return to do a certain number of things, settlement freezes, whatever it is. Instead, it has been a pretty lopsided thing. And the reason those other countries haven't moved their embassies is, of course, Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. I have no quarrel with that politically on the ground or, morally. It should be. But the reason those countries haven't done it is because there are Palestinian claims on Jerusalem as well. They claim it as their capital as well. A very large number of Palestinian Arabs live there. There are whole sites holy to Islam there. So for that reason, it's always been thought this matter should be settled in the context of the overall Palestinian-Israeli negotiation. Here, what you've done is unilaterally made a concession. It looks very striking and bold, but when you sort of think to yourself, wait, what did you get for that?
Well, he got a win, right?
Politically.
Yeah, and that's what was on his mind. And Kushner really is playing with a little act of deception here. Many administrations wanted this easy win. They didn't take it because of exactly what you're saying right now, what will come after it. And we're showing you the split screen right now. To be fair, what's happening on the left part of your screen is not new and is not motivated simply by what's happening with the embassy today. The fence that is there, the wall that is there, this outward symbol of separation has been an agitating force since its construction. Right. But the idea of what comes next, it's hard to see how this move is being contemplative of the thing that follows.
Well, and to your point, Chris, many presidents have talked about this, but it's important to realize just how political the whole issue is in America. This whole notion of moving the embassy to Jerusalem started in 1995-96 when Bob Dole was challenging Bill Clinton for the presidency. Dole had a record on Israel that was not so great. It was not pro-Israel enough. And some of his supporters said to him, why don't you do this symbolic thing? Say you're going to move the embassy to Jerusalem and pass legislation, but give the president the ability to keep waving it so you get the political win, but it doesn't actually happen. This whole thing originated in politics, and it's not an accident, by the way, that Trump announced it the weeks before the Roy Moore Senate race, when there was this concern of motivating evangelicals. Mm-hmm. So it's always been tied up with American politics. It's difficult to see, as I say, on the ground, if you were doing this as a strategy, why you would make a one-sided move without getting something, just simple bargaining.
Just to protect the embassy as not being a symbol of something to overturn.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because the situation in there now, we know that the U.S. Forces have been making sure it's safe enough. They know it's not safe enough to move staff in there
right.
Yet. They're blaming it on construction, but we know what the primary concerns are. You're making it a target for people who don't like the move because there is no reciprocal give on the other side that would make the move of the embassy symbolic of a compromise.
You know, it's one thing to talk about fulfilling your promises, but it's another thing to just do a series of moves that appear to be political pandering rather than strategic. I mean, one of the things that the President of the United States, particularly in the Middle East, has always been cautious of is you want to be seen as the honest broker. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, you aren't going to get a peace deal if both sides don't have a certain amount of trust in you.
Right.
And that's to your point, the criticism, the point that you made earlier about the role now. We see Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner arriving. In terms of having a broker in play here, the role that the president had given to Jared Kushner, there's interesting analysis in Haaretz earlier today saying, the golden couple of Jared and Ivanka has lost its shine. Is Jared Kushner actually helping, given what he's doing and what we know he's planning to say today? Is he the right person? I know we've asked it before, but is he the right person to be out there as one of the faces of this move.
Look, the great advantage Jared Kushner has, whatever his Middle East background, whatever his diplomatic background, whatever any of that is, that he has the ear of the president. So if he could deliver the president, you know, that makes a big difference. And Jared Kushner seems to be a bright guy. And, you know, he can study up on the issues. But the crucial question is, can you deliver the president? And if he can do that, other presidents have used personal emissaries in the past, not quite as young as him and all that. But I don't have a problem with that. The real question is, what is Jared Kushner doing again to win the trust of both sides? What is the strategic framework within which this took place? As far as I can see, there was none. This was a giveaway to one side, and it's stunning that if you were going to do that, again, just simple, these guys are supposed to be great negotiators when they buy and sell buildings. The simple logic would say, if you're making a huge concession to one side, say to them, here are the three things we want in return.
Well, look, I mean, even one of the excerpts from the comments that he's expected to make, we believe it is possible for both sides to gain more than they give so that all people can live in peace. The place where he is going to give these remarks is going to stand in contrast to the message that he's going to offer there to the ears of the Palestinians.
Well, the Palestinians have lost all trust in the United States. And I think it's important to remember that the reason you want the Palestinian trust is just to make the deal.
And if you can't make a deal, there is no peace. Fareed, thank you so much for helping us on this. Erica, thanks to you as well for getting me through this morning.
Good to be here.
CNN Newsroom with Poppy Harlow is going to pick up right after the break. Stay with CNN.